You are Locked On Wolves Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Late game drama for the Wolves again, but in the end, they find a way. They hold on. Fourth dub in a row. Final score versus the Heat tonight, 106-104. What's going on back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow at JRBorman13. Jack, lots to get into. How the Wolves found a way to hold on and snatch up their fourth win in a row. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so again, Wolves looking for their fourth in a row. They travel to Miami, take on what's his name? Can you just say it for me?
Adebayo. Bam Adebayo.
Thank you. Tyler Hero. Those two were money tonight. They get up 11 in the first quarter. They give it all right back in the second quarter. We go into halftime. You look up. It's like, wait, we're tied? We're tied going in the locker room. Third quarter, both teams just going blow for blow, 28-28 in the third quarter. So tied up again, going into the fourth quarter. And then mid to late fourth quarter-ish, I'm sure you got the exact time mark, but Wolves go on like an 11-2 run. They get some breathing room, but Miami just wouldn't go away, man. It was an absolute back-and-forth gunfight, as Jim Pete called it on the broadcast. Wolves hold on despite no player scoring over 15 points, Jack. But at the same time, you look at the box score, they had 7 players all with 12 points or more. So they hold on. They win it 106-104. They climb back up to 7 games above 500 now, 36-29. I like to start big picture here. Another just great game, fun game. Again, winners of 4 in a row. They showed tonight, I feel like, they can win in a multitude of ways. Again, no player with more than 15 points, but again, 7 players with 12 or more points. DDV, he's hitting his peak, man. Julius, he's officially back. And now you get Rudy Gobert returning possibly Sunday. We'll talk about that. If not for sure, the following game Tuesday night. How are we just feeling, just in general, right? Like top to bottom with this Wolves team and where they kind of stand in the Western Conference?
Yeah, I think you're feeling pretty good, considering, the Clippers are sliding right now. The Kings have been playing well and kind of climbing back up the standings. And then, the Wolves have just been taking advantage of the fact that, Memphis is 3-7 in their last 10. Houston is 5-5 in their last 10. So for the Wolves to be able to rattle off, what is it? 5 in a row now, 4 in a row, 4 in a row is pretty good. And I think too, you got to also feel good that the Wolves, got a clutch time win in a roller coaster of a game down in Miami where, a lot of good teams kind of go to die in those types of situations because of, how enjoyable it is to be down in Miami, off the basketball court. So, yeah, I think they very easily could have wilted after coughing up an 11-point lead, losing the entirety of the 11-point lead 2 different times in this game. But, yeah, I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to the Wolves in that, Miami was in the bonus for the final 10 minutes of this game, and they did not shoot a single free throw while they were in the bonus. And that was really crazy considering that the Wolves fouled the Heat 3 times on one possession to put them into the bonus essentially. And the Wolves just kind of held
total free throws tonight from both teams. It just felt low.
Yeah.
Right
I mean, in the first 9 minutes of this game, there was 2 fouls, both on the Wolves, and only 1 turnover between the 2 teams. So it was a pretty clean game and then got off the rails. But yeah, I mean, you saw why Miami is the worst clutch time offense in the NBA this season by offensive rating. Just really had a tough time creating good shots. And then when they did create good shots, they just weren't able to knock them down. So yeah, you hope that Anthony Edwards is all right. He was very clearly sick. A lot of times in the huddle where they just showed his head in a towel. He did not start the third quarter. We don't have official word, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was receiving an IV or something like that to get some fluids to start that third quarter. But hope that he's all right, and got to give him a lot of credit for the way that he battled back, made a couple of huge threes in that fourth quarter, and season high tying 13 rebounds for Ant tonight. So great to see everybody kind of leaving it all out there.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
What was the turning point for you, Jack, tonight in this game? Because this was a dogfight pretty much from the second quarter, really at halftime, pretty much till the end of the game, till the clock hit zeros. Especially, again, it was a dogfight, especially once we got down into crunch time. What was the turning point for you tonight?
Yeah, for sure. There's two different ones for me, but I will start with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mr. Fourth Quarter. I think is what we got to start calling him. Hits a three at the 6:39 mark to tie it at 92, and that set off a 16-7 run. During which the Wolves made 3 threes in a 2-minute span. Ant and Nas both added threes that were both go-ahead threes to help them build a 5-point lead, and that was kind of the cushion that they needed to kind of get this thing to the finish line and at least give themselves some breathing room that, help them sustain Miami throwing a punch here or there offensively. So, I think that was the main one. But another one that I don't really think should go unnoticed, even though it might, was late in that second quarter, the Wolves' ball movement against the Heat zone really started to pick up after the Wolves just were missing a bunch of open shots in that second quarter. They're generating some good looks, but weren't making a ton of passes, just kind of pinballing it around the zone. But I think Jaden McDaniels really started to find his kind of groove and rhythm as a cutter, operating and maneuvering in the space that you'll get in that 2-3 zone look, and that really unlocked a lot for them. I think creating some form of a blueprint that they followed for the remainder of the game that I think allowed them to operate a little bit more cleanly against that zone. And that was one of several offensive kind of differences that we saw in this game. I think early on in this game, Mike Conley was not initiating a whole lot. Chris Finch was having Julius Randle initiate a lot of the offense up top while Mike was spacing to the slot or the corner, and then that way Mike was able to play off the catch on the second side, where he was able to then get inside for a couple of scores, knock down his first 3 that he shot, scored 5 quick points. But I just like the way that he's been using Randall more in the middle of the floor in these spread floor lineup looks, with 5 guys that can shoot the 3 on the floor at one time. I think, just kind of creates a good environment for Julius to really be at his most effective as a playmaker and as a scorer. But tonight it was much more of a playmaking operation. And then, that also allows the Timberwolves to use Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels as screeners off the ball, where then both those guys can slip those screens, pop off those screens, get rescreen actions for those 2 guys. So I just think using Julius Randle is a little bit more of a playmaker, especially in lineups when Mike Conley's out there. So Julius isn't just standing around. I think you really need to involve him in the action. It has been really important, and something that I've certainly noticed Chris Finch has done way more of since Randall has returned from injury compared to his pre-injury play. And then I also really liked that in that zone offense, they put Naz Reid in the middle of that zone. I think Naz is really good at catching the ball and making quick decisions in the middle of the floor as well. They had Julius Randle kind of up top above the break, either in the slot or at the top of the key, to make those entry passes, to be able to have a guy at 6'8", 6'9", that can throw passes over the top of that zone, I think is important. Whereas if it was someone like Mike or Ant, I think that height and length at the top of that zone would be a little bit more of a factor. So I think the way the Timberwolves zone offense operated was pretty good, and I think in large part due to the way that Chris Finch used his 2 bigs, and you got to give those 2 guys credit for the way that they not only made good decisions and made quick decisions for the most part, but also were adhered to the game plan pretty strictly in a really good way. And I think it'll be, I think just kind of creates a really interesting question of how is this play style going to be uprooted or changed when Rudy Gobert comes back into the lineup potentially on Sunday, because it is just so different from the way that they play when Rudy's out there.
Just going back to your point about Naz Reid and Jaden offensively, no coincidence, I'm assuming they both were the only 2 players in the positive in the plus minus. Naz Reid, team high, plus 19. Jaden McDaniels, number 2 on the team with plus 9. Sorry, Joe Ingles, I'm not counting your plus 1 in 0 minutes. But to your point, I mean, that just kind of, again, just kind of goes to show everything you just broke down offensively about what Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels did, especially against that Miami zone. If I would have told you before the game that Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards would combine for 26 points tonight and the Wolves would win this game, you would have said what?
The Heat must have missed a lot of shots. I think, the Heat were pretty shorthanded in this game. I mean, Alec Burks has been playing well for them. He didn't play. Andrew Wiggins didn't play for them. Nikola Jovic could be out for the year with, I think, a fractured wrist or hand or something like that. And then, Jaime Hawkins and Tyler Hero both missed the last game, so they were coming back, and they didn't have Kel'el Ware either tonight. So I think, Eric Spoelstra is a genius coach on the defensive end of the floor. I think the different buttons he presses at different times is...
Yeah, you called him a mad scientist. Was that 2 days ago? Preview.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the best coach in the NBA. Either him or Ty Lue, and I think you understand why with what he's able to do defensively. But I think sometimes just not having enough scoring juice out there could hurt you a little bit. So I think it was a good spot for the Timberwolves defense to play well, and to their credit, that they certainly stepped up and did just that.
Plenty more deep dive from this one. Game MVP, we'll unveil that, plus a quick look at the young pups, Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, and the Wolves' turnover differential. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a chance at a huge return, $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. Why I love FanDuel? When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in some NBA future action while you're there. Naz Reid, 6 Man of the Year odds, still sitting at 5-1, all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Somebody moved my buttons, man. It took me a second to find that. Jack, I can't wait to find out who your MVP is tonight, because I feel like there's kind of multiple ways you could go with this one. So talk to me, lay it on us, game MVP tonight.
This might be a surprising one for people that were in the chat watching, considering that he did not play very much in the fourth quarter. But I'm going to go with Mike Conley tonight. I think that Mike Conley was super important in key stretches of this game. So Mike Conley, tonight for the Timberwolves had 15 points, made 6 of his 9 shots. And I just thought he was super aggressive in pivotal moments, to start the game. I think he set a really good tone. Finch probably told him, like, hey, if you're going to be out there, like, we need aggressive downhill Mike Conley playing with some juice, some burst off the dribble. Being willing to take shots when he has them was huge. And at the start of the first half, those first half starters, they won 20-15 with a plus 42 net rating. And the second half starters won 16-10 and had a net rating of plus 67.7. I mean, 2 obviously super small sample sizes, but those were the 2 best lineups that the Timberwolves played tonight, were the starting lineups at the start of the first and third quarters. And I thought Mike had a ton to do with that. And I just loved the way that, he was being unafraid to get downhill into the paint. I think the spacing tonight was really good. So, he was able to use some of the speed that he still has off the dribble against some slower defenders to get into the paint. And then he finished when he got there, which was super important. I mean, took a mid-range jumper. We haven't seen many of those that aren't those little runner push floaters from Mike. And then had a beautiful step through move on Kevin Love down low too, which was big. So I think it's really important for this team and for Mike to at least be able to know that he's still got it and can still give you one of these games and was really big for him probably to get a night off the other night in Charlotte to come out and be moving pretty well and have the requisite juice to come out and get it done. So for him to have 15 points on 9 shots in 25 minutes, I mean, that's pretty much exactly what you're going to be wanting from Mike Conley if he's going to continue to be out there a decent amount. And again, would have liked to see him start or play more in the fourth quarter, but again, you can't really say anything bad about that decision from Chris Finch, considering the way that Dante DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker played in that fourth quarter, and then totally understand trying to get Jalen Clark in there for some defense. But I think that Mike was super important to the Timberwolves winning tonight, and again tied, like you said, with Dante and Naz for team high in scoring at 15 points, and did so super efficiently. Was 3 of 4 inside the arc, 3 of 5 outside the arc. So again, got to give it up for the old guy. Still really important to what this team wants to be able to do as we enter the final month of the regular season and hopefully get ready for some playoff hoops.
Yeah, definitely refreshing to see Conley bust out in a game like he had tonight for sure. How about the young pups? No Dilly tonight. Shannon comes in, hits 2 huge 3-pointers, both in the corner. Clark made some huge plays defensively to force some turnovers, and he even cashed in offensively on one of them. What'd you see tonight, and kind of where's the arrow, I guess, pointing for both those guys?
Yeah, I think for TJ, I think TJ deserves a ton of credit. TJ only played 8 minutes in this game, played 3 minutes in the first half, 5 minutes in the second half. On the first possession of each of his stints, he made a left corner 3. And both of those shots were really important. Kind of that second quarter kind of added to some of the momentum that the Wolves were building. Or was it late first quarter? I think it for TJ, yeah, it was late first quarter, was just kind of adding to some of the momentum the Wolves had built shooting the ball from 3 in that first quarter. The Timberwolves were 7 of 13 from 3, and all 7 threes came from 7 different guys. And so for TJ to pop right off the bench and be ready to go and make a corner 3 was super important, especially considering the way he's passed some of those up in order to try to get downhill, and maybe isn't trusting his shot quite as much as this coaching staff would want him to. And then what happens in the second half? TJ comes into the game at, a pretty pivotal point. Miami just rips off that, I saw a comment in here saying that the turning point was when Miami scored 8 points in 22 seconds. And that was certainly a turning point for sure in terms of kind of making the game closer for the final quarter and a half. But again, like TJ comes right off Minnesota calls a timeout after that Bam dunk that gets them within 3. And TJ comes in and what does he do? Makes a 3. And that was super important for the Timberwolves just to kind of get some breathing room. Got the lead back up to 6 and I think just kind of calmed everybody down. So for him to be able to do that was super important. And I think to prove to the coaching staff, like, hey, I know that I'm going to play in some of these shorter stints, and my playing time probably isn't going to reach higher than 15 minutes on any given night unless guys are out. And so I think that sent a really strong message. And then I also liked the time at which Chris Finch pressed the Jalen Clark button. I think he tried to get Jalen Clark in there when Jaden McDaniels was down, either when Jaden McDaniels or Nickeil Alexander-Walker was down. I think for the majority of this game, he tried to have one or both of at least 2 of Jaden, Nickeil, and Jalen out there at the same time, so that one of those guys would be able to chase Duncan Robinson around, and then the other guy would be able to guard Tyler Hero. And so I thought that the way that he managed the rotation from the defensive assignment perspective was really strong as well. And I think Jalen and TJ were both pretty effective in their minutes and deserve their flowers. And I mean, Jalen Clark, again, 2 steals in 11 minutes, and both those steals
crazy
for points the other way. So I just love the way that those 2 guys continue to show that, hey, even if they're going to play short stints, they're ready to go, and they're going to be impactful when they get on the court.
Yeah, you think about it. They lost that turnover battle 14-9 tonight. Think about it. If they don't have Jalen Clark stepping up with those 2 steals in 11 minutes, all of a sudden that's 14-7, and who knows, you might lose a 2-point game instead. A couple minutes left. Let's talk. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say 14 turnovers is not a bad night at all. That's right at the league average. No. So, but yeah, I mean, you got to give credit to the Heat for taking care of it.
For sure. Let's talk about that Spurs game coming up Sunday night. Plus, we'll wrap up with what we'll be talking about. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. You know, when your schedule, it gets packed, could be work projects, whatever it may be. It's so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they become more important than ever. You know, if you've been thinking about starting therapy, maybe it's time to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. It's so simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're getting 10% off the first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Spurs up next. That's Sunday night. 26-34 on the year heading into tonight. Obviously, they got Victor. They got De'Aaron Fox now. They got some nice young toys they're trying to develop. Sounds like we might get Rudy Gobert back finally as well. So I guess knowing all that, what's your biggest storylines, if you will, and kind of the game and scouting report matchup, Wolves versus the Spurs?
Yeah, I think you'd hope that the Timberwolves can continue to shoot threes the way that they have been at this rate. I mean, the last they were 18 of 45, 40% tonight. Last 5 games, they're 4-1 in those games. They are 98 of 238. That's over 41% from 3, and they've made at least 18 threes in all those games. So you'd hope that would be able to continue. And then it's a really good matchup offensively again for a guy like Dante DiVincenzo, who's been tremendous since he's gotten back into the lineup. He's got 26 assists to just 4 turnovers in the 6 games since he's been back. It's an assist to turnover ratio of 6.5. Again, the NBA team average is 1.85 right now for the season. And anything for a point guard north of 3 is awesome. And he's more than double that right now. And so Dante has 0 games since he's come back. All 6 games, he's had 1 or fewer turnovers, which is exactly what you want. So you'd hope that those 2 trends can continue against a Spurs team that has been awful defensively since they've lost Wemby. Unfortunately, has a blood clot in his shooting shoulder, and is someone who has had several blood clots as a young adult, including those DVTs. They're not fun, and so I hope that he's okay, and you know that it's not a long-term thing for him. Hopefully, he can kind of continue on that. Asar Thompson, Brandon Ingram, get 1 blood clot, and then you're totally fine once you kind of go through that initial recovery. So. First and foremost, hope he's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been out the last 8 games, will not play the rest of the season. And since then, the Spurs are dead last in starter scoring at 60 points a game, but they are first in bench scoring at about 60 points a game. And a big part of that is because, number 4 overall pick Stephon Castle has been asked to kind of step up his scoring. He's been pretty inefficient in the way that he's done it, but he has done it. And Keldon Johnson's been really good for them off the bench as well. And another part of this, unfortunately, the Spurs didn't have very many games to play with De'Aaron Fox and Wemby. They swung for Fox at the deadline, and he's really struggled the last 5 games without Wemby. Just 18 points a game on less than 40% shooting, just 25% from 3. And he's used to having awesome screen setters or guys that, you really are able to generate a lot of space from, and Wembanyama and Sabonis back in Sacramento. And so there just haven't been as many opportunities for him to have a clean runway in a pretty jumbled kind of floor that doesn't have a whole lot of spacing out there. And so I think you're going to also see some 2 point guard lineups with Fox and Chris Paul. Okay. And so I think it could be, another good opportunity for Mike Conley to get some good run, and hopefully he won't be hunted too much defensively with him being able to go up against another, older small point guard and Chris Paul. And then defensively for San Antonio, they've been getting absolutely crushed on the glass. They're second worst in the league in defensive rebound percentage over their last 5 games, and their paint defense has been equally terrible. They're allowing about 60 points in the paint, which is also second worst in the league in that span. So it should be a really good matchup for Anthony Edwards if he's feeling better, and Julius Randle to be able to get downhill and play in the paint and be successful. I think, asking, Bismack Biyombo, who they signed after the whole Wemby situation, it's going to be really difficult to ask him to guard either Julius Randle or Naz Reid in space. So whomever he ends up guarding, I think should have a really nice night in terms of perimeter oriented play on the offensive end of the floor.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, Jack, last one before we get out of here. What's the water cooler talk, if you will, at work after this one tonight?
Yeah, I think, I know people in the chat have been very critical of Chris Finch for sure throughout this season. And I think he's earned a decent amount of that criticism. But I do think that Chris Finch has been really, really good the last few games. And I've been kind of keeping an eye on the chat, and have seen that there have been a lot of comments about Rob Dillingham. So I definitely encourage you to go check out Chris Hines' Twitter account. He tweeted out a long quote from Chris Finch on Rob Dillingham and his development that I think is important context for some of that commentary that's going on in the chat. But yeah, what we'll be talking about tomorrow, I think, is just Chris Finch turning a corner and kind of figuring out the best way to use some of these guys, at least, since Julius and Dante have come back. I think, the way that he's had the group playing without those 2 guys and without Rudy Gobert, I think has kind of created a blueprint for, how he wants Dante to be playing, how he wants Julius Randle to be playing. And I think, again, you got to give a lot of credit to Finch as a coach for, having, first of all, helping to create a culture and practice habits for the guys that weren't in the rotation that were then asked to step up into the rotation. Guys like TJ Shannon, Terrence Clark, or TJ Shannon, Jalen Clark, playing really well. And then, guys like Jaden and Naz continuing to play the way that Finch wants his guys to play. And like I said, creating that blueprint for how he wants this group to play. So, creating structure and practice for the guys that aren't in the rotation to learn how he wants them to be playing, so that they can find success once they do get into the rotation. Super important. And then I think for him to kind of help Dante and Julius see the way that he wants them to be playing once they got back. I know Julius had a great comment after the game, and I think it was in Charlotte, of him, basically just saying that Finch helped him kind of see that he wants Julius to be playing with more pace, make quicker decisions. And he saw how other players doing that made an impact on the offense and them playing a lot better and getting that turnover total and turnover rate much lower. And again, last 5 games, they've been, they've had the fewest turnovers in the league. So, Finchy deserves a ton of credit for that. And who knows, this could look a lot different with Rudy Gobert, just because I think that, when you have him on the floor, you generally play a lot slower. You generally play, a lot more pick and roll game and less, just popping the ball around pinball style. But, we'll see what happens. And I think, again, super positive development since the All-Star break, especially on the offensive end of the floor. And I'm sure he's got a plan for implementing Rudy Gobert back into the floor. So back into the mix. So I'm super interested to see what that looks like. And if this team can keep it rolling for the most part on the offensive end of the floor, because they were great tonight. I know they only scored 106 points, but this game was a little bit slower in terms of a lot less possessions in this game. And they certainly could have scored a lot more than 106 with how many awesome shots they generated in the second quarter that just didn't drop. So yeah, offense trending in the right direction, and I think Chris Finch deserves a lot of credit for that.
Well said, man. Great stuff, as always. Wolves survive. More late game drama. They find a way, in the end, to win their fourth in a row. Final score again versus the Heat, 106-104. 7 games above 500 now on the year. As always, huge shout out to all you guys, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. So much appreciation. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And please go follow Jack at Jared Borman 13 on X, live from the Target Center. More games than not. Again, Spurs up next. That's Sunday night, 7 p.m. tip. Catch you right here. Same time, same place. But until then, signing out.